All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me here. We'll go ahead and get started here shortly. Let's just close a couple things up, so hopefully we don't have any snags. Um, so if you got your questions, go ahead and post them. The way that I do it, and I'm going to be starting here with, looks like Richard A. So Jim K., Michael M., Fonz B., Richard C., Jeffrey F. Some of these people I'm seeing that posted questions over the weekend. We don't have office hours on the weekend. So if you post a question over the weekend, it's most likely not going to get answered. So what I do is I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So today's office hour started at 5. I'm going to be answering questions, starting to answer questions that were asked 4 p.m. Eastern time and after. So if you're someone that posted an office or a question between last Friday's office hours and now, and you're here and you want to see your question get answered, just go ahead and copy and paste your question in there, or just ask your question in the comments there. If you're looking for where the comments are, it's either going to be below the video there. If you're on like a mobile device, if you're like a normal laptop, desktop computer, something like that, it's going to be to the right of the video. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to start here with Richard A. So Richard A says, the spine tilt I use when I drive sometimes causes me to hit ball with irons, hit behind the ball with irons and woods. Do I need not to tilt with clubs other than driver? No, you want to be having some tilt with all the clubs. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the first piece of the test we call system stable fluid spine. Ideally, what we would have for our good stable fluid spine is at address, we'd be somewhere in that 6 to 8 degree range, angled away. At the top of the swing, if you were to take a couple of lines here and put them outside of my torso here, I'm 6 to 8 degrees angled away. At the top of the swing, I want to be within those lines there, and I also want to be in that same tilt at the top. So the overall angle of my body here at the top of the swing, I want to see that about in that same 6 to 8 degree range. Now, as I come into contact, I want to see that angle. I want to get more angled away. I want to be more in that 18 to 25 degree range as I'm coming into contact here. So those are the spine angles that we want to see kind of in the golf swing there. Now, for a driver, we can be a little bit more on the more angled away side. And then for like a wedge, because typically our stance is a little bit more narrow and the ball's a little bit further back in our stance, we can be in a little bit more of a vertical. We still don't want to be like this or anything like that. We just want to be very, very slightly angled away for those shots. So it can change basically based on your stance and your ball position. And typically that's going to happen fairly naturally, right? So very, very easy way to get into a very natural angled away position at address. This is the way that I essentially do it, is I always think of the club as an extension of my lead arm, right? So my ball position with a wedge is pretty much going to be right in the middle of my stance, right? So if I set up to that and think of the club as an extension of my lead arm, and I always have my body square, basically parallel to my target line there, if I do that, I'm going to naturally get into a good spine angle position every single time at address there, if I keep my shoulders square. So this is what that would look like from a kind of down the line perspective. You can see that my shoulders are fairly square there. Now, if I set up, and because my hand is lower, that's why I get that tilt away, that natural tilt away. So if I were to set up and have my spine more straight up and down, now look at my spine's more straight up and down. Now look at my shoulders. If I do that here again, look at my shoulders. My shoulders are more open, right? If I get too far angled away, my shoulders are going to be very closed off. So if I'm all set up where my shoulders are square, my hips are square, my toes are square to my target line here, and my ball position, if I'm thinking of the club as an extension of my lead arm, and my ball position is in the middle of my stance with a wedge, that's going to give me about in that probably 6 degree range. Now with the driver, I'm a little bit wider. I'm playing this ball more off my lead shoulder here. So again, the club is extension of my lead arm. I don't have a driver here, but I'm just going to show you here with a wedge. If I take my hand, I keep my shoulders kind of square. I take my hand and I put it underneath. Look at that. I automatically have a little bit more. That's going to put me more in that, probably that 10 degree range. It can be even a little bit more than that, the 12 degree range if you want. But typically, in that 6 to 8 degree range is going to be good with all clubs. You can have a little bit more tilt with the driver. We want to have this tilt. Now, you don't have to have this tilt at address. The most important tilt is at impact. So the reason why we tell you to have this tilt at address is because it makes it easier to get into this tilt at the top, and that tilt at the top makes it easier to get into that position at impact. If we're not in this tilt at the top, we're going to tend to want to, if we're more vertical at the top, right, we're more like this, we're going to tend to want to come out that way. If I'm too angled away at the top, I'm like this, I'm going to really want to swing. I'm going to tend to want to really swing from the inside. So those are the reasons why we want to be in those positions. You want to have those positions with all of your clubs. Now, if you're hitting it fat with those clubs, it's probably just because you're not used to that position. Or typically when you're hitting the ball fat, it's always because you are either not loading up properly and or you're not getting a proper weight shift to your lead side. Because what the shots where you're coming in and you're hitting the ground, that's typically dictated by where your lead shoulder is in the swing, right? So if my lead shoulder is ahead of the golf ball, I'm more than likely to get that ball first contact, hit the ground in front, take that divot. If my shoulder is more behind the golf ball, I'm going to be, or too close to the golf ball, it's straight down in front of the golf ball, I'm typically going to bottom out near where my lead shoulder is. It's not exact. There's a lot more things that go into it, like releasing early and things like that. But if that lead shoulder, if you're behind or in front, that's going to dictate typically where that low point is. So if you're coming into contact and you're hitting the ground well before, I check and see where your shoulder is. I try to get that shoulder. Excuse me. I try to get that shoulder more in front of the golf ball as you're coming in to promote that ball first contact. That's what I'd be trying to feel like. Get that shoulder ahead. All right, so William H. says, despite trying different things, I'm still not able to hit the ball first. Any suggestions? So, William, it's hard to say exactly without seeing your swing, but just like what I talked about there, I would look and see where that lead shoulder is in your swing. You may want to – we actually have a course that's actually perfect for what you're working on. Like I said, a big reason why I see people hit the ball fat is because they don't load up properly and they don't get to their lead side properly. So when you don't lead up properly, that causes – it's an action-reaction kind of thing, right? So if I get to where I'm leaning toward the target at the top, my spine angle is really like this, and the downswing, I'm going to tend to want to fall away. So there's your action, and there's your reaction. Now look where my lead shoulder is. That's behind the golf ball. That's going to cause me to chunk it if I hit the ground. If I miss the ground, I'm going to hit a lot of tops and maybe some thins and things like that. Basically, I have to pick the ball perfectly to ever hit it good. So if you're not loading up properly, getting behind the golf ball, getting that shoulder behind the golf ball, and getting nice and loaded up here, nice and angled away, then it's going to be hard for me to get my weight moving forward in the downswing. Now, maybe you are in this great loaded up position, but you just don't transfer that weight. You just stay back here and flip the club through and stay on your back foot. So that stop chunking and topping course is going to help you to, one, get loaded up properly. I believe that's called the dot drill that Clay does in that video. And two, it's going to help you to get that proper weight shift to your lead side. So I recommend going and checking that. If it's something else, there could be some other things going on there. It's hard to say, but I would check out that stop chunking and topping course. It's very easy to get to. All you have to do is click the house icon at the top of the page. That's going to take you to the home page. And if you scroll down the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses that we offer. We have lots of bonus courses to tackle specific issues that are going on in your swing. Chunking and topping, they're both a product of that same issue, not controlling that low point in your swing. And that's going to be gone over to be able to get fixed in that course. Now, to really ingrain this and to make it second nature, you'll want to work through that stable and fluid spine course and to make sure that your spine angles are looking good throughout the swing. Because if you're hanging back, you're getting too much, if you're moving all over the place, it's going to make it very, very difficult. So I'd also recommend working through that stable fluid spine course to ingrain those proper spine angles, because we can get you in a course, like a crash course, basically. That's what I would call it, those bonus courses. In a crash course, we can get you where you can start hitting the golf ball a lot better. But if you don't work on it and put in the repetition and the time, it's just going to come back to get you later. So you got to put in that time and that repetition to make it second nature, to make it automatic, to where you don't even have to think about it. Those chunks and those thins are going to be few and far between if you take the time to do that. So that's going to be in the Stable Fluid Spine course. The first piece of the Top Speed Golf system. All you got to do, again, is click that house icon at the top of the page. That will take you to the home page, and on that home page, you'll see a list of all the courses. Click on that Stable Fluid Spine and get working on those as well. All right, so Nathan L says, can you go over the right wrist should look like at the top of the backswing? I have been flexing my right wrist back and holding it on the downswing, which has produced better contact, but I feel I can be hitting the ball much better. Thanks. All right, so yeah, at the top of the swing, ideally what we would have is that right wrist or that trail wrist to be in that bent back, pointing up to the sky position. If it's kind of like this, you can see what happens to my lead wrist when that happens. When my trail wrist is not pointing up to the sky, my lead wrist, my left wrist, has to start cupping. And when that wrist starts cupping, see what happens to the club face? It leaves it wide open. So here I am. If I cup that wrist and put that wrist, if I flex that wrist, you can see that really opens the face. And now into contact, I'm going to have this face open as I'm coming down the downswing. I'm going to have to really roll my hands over hard. It's just going to be hard to be consistent when you do that. A lot of times what happens is when we get that club in that position, we're going to tend to kind of swing over the top to try to get that club face square. I often see that with people who leave that face open. Sometimes they'll just leave the face open. They'll swing down on plane and they'll have that face open, or they'll hit it a mile to the right, or they'll come down and they'll really roll those hands over hard at impact, flip the club through. It just causes a whole host of issues. So ideally, what you would have is that trail wrist would be in that bent back kind of position there at the top. Lead wrist would be in kind of a flattish or even slightly bowed position is good. So a good feeling that I like to give students is to feel like you're holding a tray at the top of the swing. Like you have a tray here, you're like a waiter with a tray of drinks, and you don't want to spill those drinks. If you go like that, you're going to spill the drinks everywhere. So that's kind of the feeling that you want to have at the top of the swing. And you can see that squares up my face, and now I can come down through contact and be in a lot better position. I can rotate into contact. So that's really what you want to do. Now, the reason why it may feel like it's weak to you is because a lot of times, probably what you were doing through contact before is you were really throwing with that trail hand at that last second. And that can feel very powerful to people. I think that's a big reason why a lot of people do it, is because that feeling of with that trail wrist, our dominant hand, really throwing that club through impact and really throwing our hands through impact, it feels very powerful. Now, the reality of it is that it adds a lot of loft to your face. It's also burning up all your energy back here before it really gets to the golf ball. So to be able to get that lag and release that lag out in front, and to also take loft off that club face, we want to have that trail wrist in that bent back position coming all the way through contact. So there's a great course on the website to help you work on this. There's actually two courses. One is going to be that straight line release course, specifically the pet the grass drill from the straight line release course. In that pet the grass drill, you're working on that exact same thing. That wrist movement as you're going up to the top, you're feeling that wrist movement through contact with the trail hand. You're also thinking about it with the lead hand, and then you're going to put those together and do them at the same time. And that's in the pet the grass drill from the straight line release course, because this lag doesn't really do us any good unless we release it, and we want to be releasing that out in front. Most of you are releasing that right here, right in front of impact, and that's going to be burning up your energy and also adding loft. So if you're ready to work on that, if you're getting good lag in your swing, your spine tilt, your shoulder turn, that's all looking good, and you're ready to work on that straight line release and start compressing the ball, then I'd be going to that straight line release course as well as the move course. The move course is basically working on that same thing with the release, but we're also working on getting that club face shallowed out early in the swing and squared up early in the swing. And that's going to make it a little bit easier to rotate through contact. Because if we're coming down steep, we can have this club in this bent back position, but if we're coming down steep like this, we're going to tend to have to make a compensation in the downswing to get that club to release out in front. We're going to make a compensation to make it release earlier to be able to hit the golf ball any kind of decent. So you can also work on that course. So to get to either one of those courses, again, just click on the house icon. That will take you to the home page. Scroll down that home page. You'll see a list of all the courses. You'll see the move. You'll also see the straight line release course. work on those, get to where that you're getting those wrist positions correct. All right. So Richard A, excuse me, says, I have been skying a lot when driving. Is that caused by too much spine tilt and dropping back shoulder? I saw Clay's video about moving ball up in stance, and that seems to help. The ball is outside my shoulder now, not inner heel. So basically, what's likely going on, almost always when I see someone pop up the ball with their driver. So if I grab a ball here, I'll grab a driver, and I'll get to show you guys my my little project that I had today that I made. I can show you that here in a second as well. So basically, talking about low point again, what's going on typically when someone's popping up their driver, they're hitting the ball kind of off the crown of the club, is that low point is happening. And by low point, just to clear that up, low point is where the club is coming down. It reaches its lowest point in the arc, and then it starts moving back up, right? So when this club comes down, we want this driver, we want that club to actually come down, reach its low point before the golf ball, and then start working up into the golf ball. So I believe it was Richard who asked the question. Yeah, so Richard A. who mentioned that he talked about a video that we released not too long ago. We were talking about setting up with the driver on your shoulder, because that's in reference to really a good indication where that low point is, whereas your feet can widen or narrow. So I'm guessing Richard might have a narrowish stance with his driver, and putting it on the inside of his foot, maybe putting that ball too far back in his stance, and maybe putting it in a place in his stance where that club is bottoming out right at the golf ball, right? So if we get that off the lead shoulder, that gives our club a chance to bottom out right before the golf ball, work up into the golf ball. Now with irons, we want that club, with that ball's further back in our stance, the ball's on the ground, we have to make ball first contact. We can't have that club bottom out before the golf ball. We need that club to bottom out after the golf ball. So we need ball first contact, club bottoms out here, and then starts working up after that. So that's for iron shots what you want. So if you're popping it up, that means that your club is most likely coming in, bottoming out at the golf ball. So moving it up further up in the stance means it gives you more space to let the club bottom out, then work up into the golf ball. It could also mean that you may be sliding forward. If you look at you may be actually doing the opposite, tilting too far away, because tilting far away makes you hit more up on the golf ball. Whereas if you don't have enough tilt, you may be hitting down and having that low point ahead. So look at your swing on video and see what's going on there. See what's going on as you're coming into contact, and see if that club is bottoming out right at the golf ball, or where that shoulder is when you're coming into contact. Are you more like this, or are you more like this, a little bit behind the ball as you're coming in? If you're more behind the ball, that's going to promote more upward angle of attack. So I got a great visual for you. I can show you my my little craft project that I had earlier today. So I'd heard some instructors talk about visualizing, hitting a nail into a golf ball. So I thought, what's a better visual than actually putting a nail in a golf ball? So I took a little drill bit, I put a hole through it, stunk up my garage, and I don't know why, but I had some really long nails in my toolbox. I don't even know why I had those, but I hammered it through here so you can get a good visual. So what we want to feel like here is that when we're hitting our driver, we want to feel like this nail is kind of angled up, and we're trying to drive this nail into the golf ball. Now with an iron, we want to have the feeling that this nail is angled down a little bit. We're trying to drive that nail down into the golf ball. So that's kind of the sensation. Now notice I don't have it like this. It's not like this that we're trying to do, because if you do that, you're more than likely going to go like that. It's just a little bit. Just like with the irons, we have this just angled down a little bit. And you may need to exaggerate the sensation based on what you're trying to do. But, if I had the nail like this, where I had it angled down a lot like that, I don't want you to have the feeling like you're going like this into the golf ball. I want you just to be hitting down into it a little bit to make sure you get that ball first contact. So that's a good visual for you to have to maybe think about in the future when you're working on this stuff. But the compression line is going to be where you're going to want to go to work on getting that that low point working a little bit better. And that's going to be in the compression line course. So to get to that course, click the house icon at the top of the page. That will take you to the home page. Scroll down the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses. Then click the compression line course to get started. So John W. says, do you want to have a spine tilt when hitting irons? Wow, a lot of spine tilt questions today. It's kind of the topic of the day. Yes, we want spine tilt with all our clubs. Like I said earlier, we can be a little bit more angled away to promote a more upward angle of attack with our driver, hitting up on the tee, right? And then for irons, we want to have a little less, basically be a little less angled away to promote a more downward angle attack. But we want to be angled away with everything. With wedges, we can be closer to vertical. But again, this can happen automatically just by the way that you set up to it. The ball position, keeping your body square, and so on and so forth. Paul B says, when maintaining, another spine angle question. So Paul B says, when maintaining spine angle, I'm now hitting the ball on target but thin. Any thoughts? Yeah, it sounds like, a thin shot is a close cousin to a top shot or a chunk. It's very close. That just means that your low point is coming in basically right at the golf ball. Or it may be coming in before the golf ball. Because if you watch here, if I have my ball, if my low point where this club is coming down and reaches its lowest point is right at the golf ball, look where my contact point is on the club. It's very, very low. If I'm coming down and my low point is just a little bit before the ball, and then it starts working up, again, look where my contact point is, very, very low on the face. Whereas if I'm coming into contact and I'm hitting down and through the golf ball, and I got some forward shaft lean here, look where that contact point is now on the face, nice and solid there. So I would look at your compression line, and you may be kind of pulling up and releasing early through contact. There's all kinds of things that be going on there, but I'd make sure that you're getting more forward, get that low point moving forward much better, and you'll get those thin shots, kind of hit down and through the ball. Like I was talking about with the nail, if you visualize you got a nail here going through your ball, and here's your club, you want to feel like you're coming in and you're hitting down and through that golf ball. Instead of right now, what's kind of going on is you're coming in very, very level with the golf ball, or even maybe a little bit up on the golf ball. Have that sensation that you got this nail going through the ball, and you're trying to nail that, or trying to hit that head on the nail, almost like you got a hammer, and you're trying to nail that head into the golf ball, down into the golf ball like that. If you have that sensation, then automatically you may get that compression line more forward and get to where you're hitting those balls, those more compressed shots. All right, so Stephen G says, I've been working on the system for a while now, and my iron play has improved greatly, but now I'm shanking my wedges 50% of the time. Any ideas what could be causing it? Sure. So basically, and this is fairly common things I hear with wedges, and a very common thing I see with wedges is that people really crowd the ball whenever they're hitting wedges. I think it's just maybe because the club is shorter. It's a shorter shot, so they kind of crowd everything in. So that's the first thing I would do, is I would make sure that you're just not crowding the golf ball. You got adequate space for your hands and the club to work through. So a good way to kind of check that, you can kind of see the club down here, is I would make sure that you got probably 4 or 5 inches of space here between your thighs and your hands. That's basically what you want to feel like. I see a lot of people when they're hitting wedge shots, they're like this. There's basically like no space. Their arms are almost sitting on their thighs. Give yourself some space there. Give yourself about 4 or 5 inches of space there. It makes it a lot easier, because if you're crowding it like this, if your hips move toward that golf ball in any way, which I often see happens, then you'll lose all that space for those hands to work through, and the hosel will kind of work out toward the golf ball. So number one, I would make sure that you have enough space there. Give yourself enough space to work those hands through. And really, the other thing that I would also do, if that doesn't really help, is to intentionally try to strike the ball off the toe. Because even you say it's 50% of the time, even the ones that aren't shanks are probably on the heel somewhere, right? So what I'd recommend doing is intentionally try to strike the ball out on the toe, and that will most likely move more of your strikes in the center of the face. And if you're still in the heel, then you got to exaggerate that even more. I would just really, really get out of your comfort zone. Even feel like you're hitting it out here where there's no grooves, or missing the golf ball completely. And you just have to exaggerate as much as you need to. It's all about adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want, right? So if the desired result that you want is here on the center of the face, and the reality is that you're out here, you need to adjust to maybe being, if this is the golf ball, feeling like this is happening, to get it to be more in the center of the face. So that's one thing I would also do as well. Now, if you actually do hit it down the toe, then that's great. That means you've made change. All you have to do at this point is ease off of that feeling a little bit. All right. So the other thing that I would also look at, we talked about that. We touched on this a little bit earlier when I was talking about how if your hips move toward the golf ball in any way, it's going to take away space. I would make sure that that's not what's happening. A lot of times when I see people, when they take pitch shots, their right hip and their leg, their trail hip and their leg and their knee kind of go out toward the golf ball here when they're starting down. So they'll bring this club back and then they'll go like this, right? When you do that, that takes away space. Even if I give myself enough space here for my hands to work through, if I go like this through contact, that's moving that hosel. I'm still gonna move my club out toward the golf ball. Okay, so feel like your knee is kind of going more toward the target, and your hip is kind of going away. Your left hip is moving away from the golf ball, and your knee is going more toward the target. So it's going to look more like that as you're coming through contact. And look how much space I have for this club to work through. If I go through like this and my backside kind of moving toward the target, we kind of get that goat hump look a little bit, then that's taking away space. So feel like, one, your knee is going toward the target, and two, like your lead hip is moving away from the golf ball as you're coming down. If you go into contact like this, then that's going to make things difficult. If you feel like your hip's going toward the target, your lead hip's going toward the target, and your right knee is going toward the golf ball, that's going to take away space. That's Shank City a lot of times. So take a look at those things in your swing. If it's not one of those things, it's hard to say. I would have to see what's going on there. We do have an unlimited swing review program. If you're interested in getting your swing looked at by an instructor, I highly recommend checking out our unlimited swing review program. We don't always have spots available. In fact, I do have a spot available right now. So if you go to the swing review page, unless it's been gobbled up in the last 30 minutes or so, I did have someone have to cancel because their course closed down or whatever, and they have to find a new place to play. So they're unable to take advantage of the swing reviews or golf in general right now, which kind of stinks. So yeah, make sure that you go in there, check out the unlimited swing reviews, grab a spot if one's available. If not, make sure that you join the waiting list so that you can get notified whenever spots become available. I recently opened up some spots this past week or so, and they sold out to the waiting list in less than an hour. So if you're interested, you need to join that waiting list so that way you get notified whenever spots open up. Otherwise, you may never get notified when spots open up. You may just, because it will get sold out to the waiting list every single time. So make sure that you do that if you're interested in the swing reviews. And that's with any of the instructors. So this time of year, it's a very popular thing to do. So make sure that you do that. All right, so Dax C says, through impact, should I be keeping the right wrist hinged back so to cover the ball with pronated left wrist, or should I be turning the grip down to square the club, or is it a combination of the two? It really depends on what your release pattern is. So pronation is going to be inward rotation, and supination is outward rotation. So if you're someone who's coming over the top, you actually may need to put your wrist into pronation to square up the face. But if you're shallowing out the club, meaning my lead arm is going to be, my elbow is going to be pointing more out, right? So I've got internal rotation of my humerus here. I think that's the upper arm bone. So humerus into my shoulder here. That's going to be internal rotation there. But you see, if I do that, my club face is going to be wide open. So what I have to do is what's called outward rotation from my elbow to my wrist. That closes the face a little bit there. And then I may also add a little bit of that bowing of the lead wrist which also squares up the face. So if I hold my arm like this and I do that motion, you can see if I hold my elbow pointing out that way, I got this internal rotation from shallowing out the club, and I do that. That's what squares up the face. So ideally, you would actually have supination, which is outward rotation, and a little bit of flexion, depending on your release pattern, to square up that face. Like a Dustin Johnson, for example, he's got this club. His wrist is like this at the top. He's not like that at impact. He's not at impact like this, right? He's got a little bit of flexion, a little bit of bowing in that lead wrist at impact, but he's actually at the top here like this, and then comes into impact, and he's actually going from flexion to a little bit of extension through contact, and that's what his release pattern is. So it really just depends. There's lots of different kinds of release patterns that you have. The main idea here is that what the club is doing is the most important thing. That club has got to be coming into contact in this kind of position. So there's all kinds of ways that can happen, right? I can have the face wide open here. Now, I wouldn't recommend that, but I can have the face wide open here and then come into contact with a lot of bowing in the wrist and things like that to make that club square up. I can have that club basically squared up already right here and basically just have rotation into contact and be in a good position. I can be coming over the top, right, and have to have that kind of rolling open of the face to square it up at contact. Now that may make me hit a huge slice, but that's better than the big old pull that I might be hitting if I don't. So it really just depends on what your release pattern is. I know that's all kind of complicated, but there's not a right answer or a wrong answer to your question here. It really just depends on where you're at the top, what you're doing in the downswing, and what gets this club to be in the right position at impact. All right. So if you have a weak grip or a standard kind of grip, a neutral grip, and your flat wrist is at the top, then when you come into contact, you're probably going to be in a very similar kind of position, right? You're going to be pretty flat wristed at contact here. Trail wrist is going to be in a bent back sort of position. Basically, you're always going to have that trail wrist in a bent back position. It's just that if you have a very weak grip, then it's maybe more bent back. Whereas if you have a very strong grip, it may have the appearance of being less bent back, right? So it really just depends on all those factors there coming into contact. So Steve H says, getting club too far inside on backswing, hip turn too flat. So first we have to understand, is that even a bad thing? If you look at JB Holmes, he brings that club way inside on the backswing. The only thing I would say when you get that club way inside is if you're bringing it inside like this. So you're kind of rolling that face open when you're bringing it back. That can cause some issues because when you get up here, you may have that face wide open, and then it can make it difficult to get that club face to square up. But if you're bringing this club in like this, and you're not rolling up open the face, and we're not seeing at the top where you're coming down steep, starting down and having to shallow it out late, it really just depends on what's going on in your swing. So, Steve, it's impossible for me to say exactly if it's wrong or bad, but I would look at those things. Is what is bringing that club inside causing an issue at impact? Right. Everything that we do in the swing is to get a good impact position, because that's the only thing that really matters is what happens at impact. So you have to look at your swing and see, okay, is bringing this club inside on my backswing causing me to have issues at impact? Is it making me go like this on the downswing and come over the top? Is it making it so my face is kind of coming in wide open when I'm coming into contact? Or is it making me come where the face is wide open here and I've got to roll the hands over hard and flip through contact? Is it basically making me go really across the line at the top and then I start down really steep and then shallow it late coming into contact, causing snap hooks, my path to be way too much into out? There's some people that bring this club, way inside, go across the line at the top, and then shallow it out perfectly in the downswing. Freddie Couples, he's across the line at the top, cup wrist, all that bad stuff, but he gets that club coming down perfectly on plane in the downswing. So not all these things are bad. We have to look at what's going on at contact and try to fix that, work back from that. So I think that's what you have to look at. If you're not focused on what's going on at contact, then you're kind of wasting your time. This is really what the Top Speed Golf system is. It focuses on the universal truths. There are no tour players out there that have spine angles that are really bad. There are none. There's no good players out there that do that. There's no good players out there that don't get a good turn. Now, you may say Tony Finau and John Rahm and stuff like that. They're getting 90-degree turns, and they're also swinging. They're just getting a shorter turn than most tour players, but they're also swinging 120 miles per hour. So if you can swing 120 miles per hour with a turn like this with your driver, then by all means, take a short turn. Take a shorter turn. That's completely fine. But Finau can also go a lot longer and swing a lot faster. I've seen videos of him where he's gotten a full shoulder turn, even bigger shoulder turn. He's already getting a 90-degree turn, but I've seen videos where he gets way more than that, and he swings 136 miles per hour. So he can do more if he wants to. It's your dispersion is a little bit higher at 136 miles per hour. It's a little tougher to play when you're doing that. So those are all things you have to consider. But anyway, that's basically what it comes down to is universal truths. That's what the Top Speed Golf system is. It's basically like the 80-20 principle is what we go by. What that basically means is that 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of the things you can basically do in your swing. And that 20% is the Top Speed Golf system. That's going to drive 80% of your results. The remaining 20% is going to be driven by 80% of the things that you can do. And it's endless, bringing the club inside, outside, all that kind of stuff. So you want to focus on the things that really, really matter the most in the swing. And that's really the Top Speed Golf system in the move. That's going to drive 80% of your results, or even more than that, in your swing. So Richard A says, I've seen people lining up over the ball with a lot of forward shaft lean. Is that the best way to achieve it in a swing short game? Not necessarily, but hey, if that gets you more forward shaft lean, again, going back to the only thing we care about is what this club is doing at impact, right? That moment in time at impact, what is that club doing? How is it moving and things like that? That's what we're interested in. So if having the club more in a forward shaft lean position at address helps you to be in a better position at impact, then by all means, let's do that. That's what we want to do. But that's not necessarily always going to be the case. I think that people get into this mindset where, well, I'm going to have this forward press, a ton of forward press at address, and that's going to make me do it at impact. No, I see all kinds of students that have the club like this and then come into impact like this, right? Just because you're in a position at address, that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen at impact. We really want to look at impact and get that and really focus on that and what we can do in our swing to make that happen. So if having more forward shaft lean at address helps you to have more forward shaft lean at impact and to have a better impact position and hit the ball better, then absolutely that's what you should do. But some people, like Adam Scott, he doesn't have a lot of forward shaft lean. He basically is just like this, has the club almost straight up and down, and that helps him to hit the ball better. If he had a forward press at impact, that probably wouldn't help him to hit the golf ball better. So you just have to look at what helps you hit the ball best. And you just try it, go to varying degrees. The easiest way to do it would be to just go from one extreme to the other. I would set up with a ton of forward shaft lean, way too much, crazy extreme, hit 5 or 6 shots, see what happens. And then progressively go to where you have a little bit less, until you're basically like this and you're taking swings. And somewhere in between there, you're going to find where you hit the ball the best. And that's what I would go with, is that portion right there. Because really the Top Speed Golf system, it covers the most important pieces. Everything else in between is really just your own kind of swing signature. That's why you see so many different swings on tour, but they're all doing the Top Speed Golf system. Like Jim Furyk, Dustin Johnson, Bubba Watson, Tiger Woods, like these are all very different golf swings, but they're all doing the Top Speed Golf system. They all have a stable fluid spine. They all have a good shoulder turn. They all have lag in the swing. They all have that compression line all lined up at impact, slightly angled away from the target, and every one of them releases that club out in front, right? So every one of them has that straight line release somewhere around that 45-degree mark. So those are the things that really matter in the swing. But they all take very different ways in getting there, every single one of them. So focus on the things that really matter the most And that's where you'll start to make progress really, really fast in your swing. So Noel H says, is it normal to need a stronger grip for a driver than an iron? It's been working well for me and didn't know if it was something wrong. No, actually, I typically have a stronger grip with my driver just naturally. So I kind of talked about earlier about how when I set up, I think of the club as an extension of my lead arm. So with the ball position more in front, I'm resting the driver right here. This is where my hands are. So naturally, my trail hand, my hands just want to be on the club in a little bit stronger position. Whereas if I'm hitting a wedge shot, right, my ball is more in the middle of my stance. If I have the club as an extension of my lead arm, it's more like right here, and my hands aren't as far forward. So naturally, I'll have kind of a weaker grip with my wedges. It's not something I think about. It's just something that happens when I always think of the club as an extension of my lead arm. So that's completely fine to have that. It's completely normal. In fact, a lot of players will have it that way for sure, and don't even realize it. Probably a lot of them. All right. So John D says, to achieve straight line release, do you aim 2 to 3 feet ahead of the ball? Does this mean you take your eye off the ball? You can do that. I mean, you can see. Basically, it's typically about 4 feet in front of the golf ball is where you're trying to release that club head. And there's actually a drill in the straight line release course where you focus on releasing that club head about 4 feet in front of the golf ball. Like you put another golf ball about 4 feet in front of the golf ball you're trying to hit, and you're trying to release that golf ball. If it helps you to look ahead, then by all means, go ahead and do that. I find I hit the ball better when I'm trying to look at the golf ball. But hey, if it helps you hit the golf ball better, then do that. Annika Sorenstam, you can see video of her swing. She looks like this at impact. Her head, she's looking out here. It looks like it anyway. David Duval, same kind of thing. You see the same thing. He's at impact. His eyes are over here, right? If you look at Tiger Woods, his eyes are back here. He looks kind of like he's looking back here, right? I think he's looking at the golf ball, but his head's kind of tuned like this. So it's really, it comes down to what helps you hit the golf ball the best. If that helps you to release that club out in front, then by all means do that. But it may not necessarily make any kind of difference for you, and you might hit the ball better when you actually look at the golf ball and focus on the golf ball. All right. So JC says, love you guys. Thanks, Jay. The straight line release is worth $1 million on its own. Okay, from the top, we create the L. Do we move the L down with our hands or our shoulders? Both. When I hold on to the L and move my shoulders down till my hands are waist high, then move to the straight line release, it feels more solid. When I do it with my hands, it feels like I'm releasing too early. I know. So looks like it kind of cut you off there. So you need to look on video to see what's actually going on. And if you're hitting the ball more solid, then I would probably go with that feeling. Doesn't mean that's the reality of what's going on. But the reality of what's going on is you really want your hips kind of bringing your torso in. You want your torso bringing your shoulders, and you want your shoulders bringing your hands, and you want your hands bringing the hands on the club. That's what you want to feel like is happening. So if I just think about my hands coming down and nothing else, it turns off my hips, and I kind of go like that. I need to feel like everything's going on. So again, feel is relative. You guys see what's going on video, and whatever you got to adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. So, but most of the time, I would say feeling like your hands are moving in would probably not be a good thing for most people, because most people, I think, are going to turn everything off and they're just kind of going to go like this. Whereas if you feel like maybe it's more like your shoulders, maybe you'll go more like this. And then maybe if you feel like it's more like your hips bringing your shoulders in, it may look more like that, which is ideal for what you want to get that club to release out in front. So I would just look on camera and see what feels give you the look you want and give you the results that you want. So Brian K says, finally able to join in, need some help, easy irons. For example, decide to hit an easy 8 instead of a full swing 9 iron. Easy swings always result in pulling the ball significantly left. The same I won't curse on here. Crap shot with a 9-iron results in a big push to the right. So I feel you. I don't like to. I like to kind of take the same kind of tempo with my swing. You know, the same kind of rhythm in my swing. So hitting an easy full swing shot doesn't work for me either. So what I'd recommend doing is just choking up on it a little bit. So if it's not quite, if it's too, you're kind of in between clubs, I would always take the club that's a little bit lower and then just choke up an inch on it. And that will take a little bit off typically. So I just practice that and just take the same kind of normal aggressive swing that you normally took. Don't try to crush a 9-iron or hit an easy 8. I would just take the same aggressive swing that you would normally take, choke up about an inch, and now on the upper club, so the 8-iron in this case, and you should get just take a little bit off of it, exactly what you want. So Steve E says feedback. A couple of weeks ago, you told me to get out of the comfort zone when trying to hit the toe of the club. I think it's like a little crying emoticon. And it says, I was struggling badly hitting the hosel. You recommended that I put something next to the ball. So if I hit the hosel, the item would be hit also. I used a plastic box and it worked great. I'm now hitting the club in the center. Great tool, drill you had. Thanks. No problem, Steve. Glad you were able to put some into practice. Nice work on that. So yeah, just keep doing that. You know, eventually you want to take the box away, right? And get to where you're able to do it. And then you just got to keep doing it until you actually start hitting the ball where you're trying to. And then at that point, you're essentially calibrated, right? So just to fill everyone in on what was going on there. So I think he said he was hitting it off the hosel, right? So if he's hitting it off the hosel, I don't know if I have what you can do is you can take a head cover, something that's not going to damage your club. Obviously, I think I had a box in here, and I used a box before. But if you take a head cover and you kind of put that just outside the golf ball there, right? Well, your mind's thinking, I don't want to hit that head cover. I just want to hit the golf ball. Or you can place a tee right outside the golf ball too, right? And try not to hit it. But I think it works a little bit better if you have something there a little bit more substantial, right? So something like a box. Something that's going to jar you a little bit. It's not going to damage your club or hurt you or anything, but it's going to jar you a little bit. It's going to send the signals to you like, hey, I don't want to do that, right? So just putting something like a head cover there, I think can do that, or a box, like a little box that doesn't have much to it. So here I've got a box right here. So this would also be fine. I can hit this box 100 miles per hour and it would do nothing to me, okay? So you kind of think about that as well. Right, so if I put that box a little bit outside the golf ball there, and I have this club set up, well, intuitively, I'm not going to want to hit that box, so I'm going to pull my hands in and do everything I can to not hit it, and that's going to help me to hit it off the toe. And then you kind of get that proper feeling. Now let's get the box out of there and try to do that same exact feeling. Okay, so if you're having trouble hitting it off the hosel shanks, put a little obstacle there. And see if that can get you to move off. And it sounded like it worked really great for who was it? Asked it, Steve. All right, glad that worked out, Steve. So Daxie says, "Thank you, Q. No problem, buddy. Glad I could help." So Richard A says, "Speaking of feedback, I purchased the AccuStrike Mac. Great little tool, instant feedback. Great suggestion. Thanks for your help." Yeah, that AccuStrike mat is pretty awesome. If any of you are interested in that, let me see if I can put a link so you guys can go get that. Yeah, it's an awesome tool. And I'll put a link in here so you guys can go check that out. I'll see if I can find the video on the site here. Of course, it's not showing up. Oh, come on. Let me see. I thought that it might show up if I looked that up specifically, but bear with me, folks. So this is an awesome tool. I don't have one in here handy. Otherwise, I would show you for sure. But basically, It allows you to, here we go, found it. It allows you to get some instant feedback. So, especially if you're hitting off of a mat, a lot of times if you're hitting off of a mat, you can't tell if you're chunking it or not. It gives you feedback if you're swinging too much too much out to in. If you're hitting well before the golf ball, you're hitting on the toe, on the heel, you're getting toe down too much. It gives you feedback, and then you can kind of adjust what you're doing and try to get that perfect looking divot on there. So I'll share this with you. I'm going to put that here in the comments, the link to the video. If you go below the video, you'll find the link where you can purchase it. If you use the code, you can get 10% off. So I just put the link in there if you want to go check that out. Just quick disclaimer, we do get a portion of those. But trust me, if we didn't think it worked great, we wouldn't show it to you guys. We get pitched all kinds of training aids, as you can imagine. If you've ever been a member of, I won't name any other kind of golf websites or anything like that, but if you've ever been a member of some of them, you get pitched stuff every single day. You're getting some new golf gadget that they're trying to pitch you. Those places are always asking us to do the same thing. 95% of those things we never even suggest to you guys because they're junk and they don't work, or we don't think that they're going to help you or anything like that. This is one item that we do believe will help you out quite a bit. It's a really, really good practice tool. They have an indoor version and an outdoor version. So the indoor version is going to be like if you have a mat, and it's going to be a little bit thicker, and you just play with it next to the mat. If you have if you're using an outdoor, you place it on the turf, and then you kind of anchor it down with some tees, and you hit it on it with that. So I think it's awesome. I think it's a great training tool, and it can really help you get to understand what's going on, help you to adjust things accordingly to get you what you want. So, and that video, we got some great drills in there to work with the AccuStrike mat as well. If you wanted to purchase it, so check that out. Really, really great training tool, for sure. Richard A, thanks for mentioning. I hope you enjoy it. So David L, do you recommend hitting off grass or mats? Ideally, it'd be grass. Mats. They can kind of mask what a bad shot. So if you're hitting off of a mat, if you hit 2 inches behind the golf ball, it can look like a fantastic golf shot. But the reality is that you hit 2 inches behind the golf ball, would have been a chunk shot. Right. So ideally you would hit off of grass, but I know that most ranges nowadays don't have grass. They typically all have mats. So hitting off of a mat, it's way better than not doing any practice at all. So I don't want you to think, well, since I can't hit off of mats, I may as well not practice at all. No, if I can't hit off grass, I shouldn't practice at all. No, hitting off of a mat is way better than not doing anything at all. So, but if you have the choice, then grass would usually be better, because it's going to give you more feedback, better feedback on what's going on. And it's going to be more applicable to what's actually happening out on the course, right? So on the course, you're hitting off of grass. You're not always hitting off of mats. So, but hey, if you're always hitting off of a mat, I've been to par 3 courses before where basically every tee box is a mat. They don't have any grass tee boxes. I've been to some of those, but then all your shots after that aren't on mats. So, but yeah, if you have the choice, I would be hitting off of grass if at all possible. So we got about 5 minutes left. Do you have any last minute questions? Go ahead and post them on there really quickly. Not starting. Actually, it's going to be next week, starting June 8th. Office hours schedule is going to be changing a little bit, at least for the summer. So typically we're going to have this week it's still going to be 9 a.m. on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. But starting next week, it's going to be 11 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. So hopefully those of you who maybe are unable to catch us on the West Coast, it's a little bit early, 6 a.m. in the morning, maybe at 11 a.m., 8 a.m. Your time, you might be able to catch us at that time. So maybe we'll pick up some more people. Hopefully we don't lose too many people for people that are, maybe it gets too late wherever they are. But But yeah, we're going to send out an email. I don't know if we're going to mention it in tomorrow's email, but I think Friday's email is going to mention it. But just keep in mind that schedule is going to be changing here shortly. David Ellis says, thanks, no problem. And then I just want to check this. I don't know if someone claimed that spot or not, but we'll go ahead and check here. Sorry, I'm just looking to see. All right, so that spot is still there. If somebody wants to do unlimited swing reviews, this is a opportunity you may not have anytime soon. So I do have one spot available. If you're interested in getting your swing reviewed by me, go in the upper right-hand corner, click the Get a Review link, and that'll take you to the swing review page where you can claim your spot. And make sure that it says on there I have a spot, because on our little page here it says that I have a spot available. So let me just make sure it actually says that on the site. Usually that corresponds correctly, but who knows? Yep, it says I have one spot. So if you want it, make sure you grab it. Otherwise, it may not be there. It probably won't be there soon. Typically, when a spot opens up, it's gobbled up very, very quickly. So if you're interested, go ahead and head over to the swing review page and grab your spot, and we'll get started. If you got some things going on in your swing, these asking your questions on here, it's good and everything, but if you I can't, sometimes it's hard for me to answer things or hard for me to help you if I can't see what's going on. I can only really tell you what I typically see, what the usual thing that I see, the most likely thing that's going on. But if I can see your swing, I can tell you, okay, this is exactly what you need to do, and give you the plan to fix whatever the issue might be. So again, we got a couple more minutes left. If you got a question, last minute question, go ahead and post it on there, and then we'll answer it real quick. If not, we'll wrap it up. Tomorrow it will be 9 a.m. But like I said, starting next week, that will be 11 a.m. on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's typically 9 a.m. Eastern time is going to end up being 11 in the future here. The reason why I did that, by the way, is in the summer here. I don't know if you ever spent summers in Florida, but in the afternoon, it is pretty hot, and it's also typically almost always going to rain. So if my office hours are in the morning, the only time I have available to kind of go out to the course, play or practice or anything like that is in the afternoon when it's the hottest and when there's most likely a rainstorm going on. So it's pretty frustrating. Every day you got plans to go play or practice, and then it's raining or it's just so dang hot, it's miserable. So if I move my office hours to 11 a.m., it gives me an opportunity to get out early in the morning when it's less likely to be raining. It's also a lot cooler and more it's actually usually it's not too bad in the mornings. It's usually humid, really humid, but it's typically like 80s in the morning. This time of year, 70s and 80s, which is definitely bearable, even though it's humid. And it's also likely not raining. So that's why we moved them to that time. So it's possible we may move them back when the weather kind of switches around, in 5 or 6 months or something like that. But for now, we're going to have it at 11 a.m. starting next week. All right. So since there aren't any more questions, we may wrap it up here. I'll give you another minute to ask a question. But yeah, and if you want that swing review spot, make sure you go over there and make sure you go over there and grab it. Because it will not be there very long, I imagine. Typically, whenever I get these little spots that open up every now and then, typically someone's on there and grabs it within a day. Typically, is when that happens. So. All right. Well, if there aren't any more questions for today, then we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thanks everybody for joining me. Like I said, tomorrow we'll be here 9 a.m. Eastern time. So real quickly, it looks like Saki K. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your question. Or your name. It says, I'm hooking the ball too much. Any tips? Quickest tip I can give you is to go to the Never Hook Again course and start working through those drills. It's most likely that's going to get you, that's going to be a whole course of videos that's going to get you to where you're stop hooking. So to check that out, click the house icon at the top of the page. That'll take you to the home page, and scroll down the home page and you'll see all the bonus courses that we offer. Click that Never Hook Again course, start working through those drills, get rid of that hook. So everybody, thanks for joining me today. Like I said, we'll be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.